Hey everybody, Rob Hogue here, Bass Stalker Fishing. I've been talking a lot about bait casters lately. Hopefully some of you have either got some for Christmas or went out and purchased some with some gift cards. But it's also off-season time, and I brought all my reels in. They're all stripped, and it's time for me to take them apart, clean them, re-grease them, put them back together. So I figured I'd do a video for you guys in case you've never tried to break down your reels. It's a very good idea to break them down and grease them at least once a year. If you fish all the time, you fish a lot, you're gonna want to do it more than once a year. But if you're just a casual fisherman or an occasion like a once a week type fisherman, breaking them down in the winter is probably going to be good. I'm going to be doing it on the Abu Garcia Revo S today. This reel's already been cleaned. I just forgot to do a video, so I'd figure I'd just take it apart and redo it, just so you guys can see how it's done. Some of the things you're going to need are a small flathead screwdriver. Sometimes you'll need a small Phillips head, 10mm socket. I like to use a bigger flathead to get the screw that holds the reel handle on. Some reel oil and some reel grease. This is Quantum hot sauce. I actually just ordered some of the Abu Garcia reel grease. Let's see how that is. I've also used Ardent reel butter. That works really good. You'll need some Q-tips. And I also have a bowl of Dawn dish soap and water and just regular water to clean off some of your parts, especially if they get oil on them, and some paper towels. And that should be it. Alright guys, let's get started. First thing you want to do is get this side plate off. So what you're going to want to do is, with the Revo, you have this little screw right here on the side, and then that'll release so that you can turn that side plate and pop it out. And I lay that off to the side, and you take out your spool, lay that off to the side, and then we'll get started on the handle. This is the one I use the big screwdriver for. And guys, I like to lay all my stuff in order. Then there's no question of the order in which things get put back together. A good tip would be to videotape yourself taking it apart so you can see what order things need to go and which way they need to face and all that. Next, we'll use our 10mm socket to actually take the handle off. And this bolt is reverse threaded. This nut, I'm sorry, is reverse threaded. All this stuff's reverse threaded, so you're gonna have to go towards the right. That in there, and now you're gonna take this handle off. This handle is also gonna have a washer behind it. Make sure you keep those two together. Now to get your drag off, you're gonna need to hold this post right here and twist it clockwise. Take this section off. This section's gonna have two washers. Take those off. And I like to clean this stuff. I've already cleaned it, but I like to get all the dirt, gunk off of it and re-grease it. Next is gonna be your knob tension, your tension knob. I like to do that upside down, because there are washers in there, and this one came off with it. Let me take it out so you see what I'm talking about. This piece, you want the teeth to be facing towards the knob, so I like to just set it in there so I know where it's at. This part kind of slid out, so we'll put it I'll put it back just so we can, sometimes if you tip the reel over it will come out. So we'll just put it back in so you can see how it's supposed to be done. Okay. Now it's time to take our side plate off. You have one, two, three, four on the Revo. So I like to always start with this one right here. If not, I always forget it, and I'm trying to take the side plate off and it's not coming off, and then I realize I forgot to take it out. So I like to start with that one first. Lay it off to the side. Lay your window off to the side. I'll take this one. Now, for the last two, you're going to want to keep pressure on this side plate. So, just so it doesn't pop loose and knock anything free underneath it. So we'll take these two screws out. Keep them over in order. Now this side plate's ready to come out. I'm going to lay it down on its side. I'm going to pull up slowly. Okay. Make sure nothing gets stuck on the back here. Now I'm going to lay this side plate off to the side for now. I'm going to finish disassembling it first. So now the first thing I take out is the main gear. There's two washers underneath it, so be careful. You don't want to mess up the order. Let me slide this piece off first. You have this, and now you can take this whole gear assembly off. Okay, then that was on the bottom, and you have one more stuck on the bottom, right here. I put it back on just so I don't misplace it. So now, I'm going to put all this stuff in order. You have the small washers. Just going to lay it all in order. And then these two come out. Now I like to take this assembly off. Take these two springs out so that don't lose those. Those fall off, they're very hard to find. And then I pull this assembly out. Because you could see, you get a lot of grease buildup on this stuff. I'm actually going to put those in this dish soap right away so they can soak and it can eat up at that grease. So now this is pretty much it. Now it's broken down. If this was a reel you're using for like punch-in or top water in the weeds and stuff like that, you could take this nose piece off with a screw here and a screw here. You just got to be careful because that post that your line guide runs on is going to pop out that side. So just be careful. But it's just those two screws. I don't need to do it with this one. But basically what I would do here is I take my Q-tip and I'm going to get any dirt, grime, extra grease buildup. I'm just going to clean this. Make sure it's not, I don't want any excess grease anywhere. I want all the dirt and grime out of there. Okay? It's already pretty clean. But and then I'm going to take the side plate I just took off. I'm going to take my paper towel. I'm going to clean the inside of this for any built up oil and grease. Okay? Now, I can take this stuff out of the soap, put it in the clean water, Take a Q-tip, get all the extra grease out of here. Okay. Rinse it off, take it out to dry. Same thing with this one. Okay. Okay. Now we can start the greasing process. Now, what I like to do, first thing I'm going to grease is this yellowish gear right here. I'm not going to put grease on this one because when I grease this, it'll get on that just from turning it. And I don't want to over grease it, so I don't want to put it on both gears and then I have all this excess grease floating around in my reel. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get my finger with a little bit of grease on there, and I'm just going to turn this knob and put light pressure down to get that grease on that gear. You're not putting a lot, and you'll see how that grease will spread to everything, the rest of the gear. Okay. Next is I like to do this just before I forget. I don't put grease on the section that hooks up to the main gear, but I do put a very little bit on the bottom section. And I mean, I have a very little bit. And I'm just going to kind of roll that on. And you'll just kind of slide this into that groove. Slide it down that hole over the posts. And I leave the springs till later because I don't want to risk messing those up. Now this is where people have a difference of opinion. Some people don't put grease on these, on your drag washers. Some people say put a very little bit, and I'm one of those people. I like to put a very small amount. I'll just rub some on my fingers and just kind of put a little bit of grease. Never put oil on them, just a little bit of grease just to make them tacky. And you start reassembling your drag system here. Same thing, just a little bit, not a lot. Your main gear. Okay. Now this is when I'm going to grease my main gear. Now this one, I'm going to need to take a little bit more grease. Okay. And I'm only going to grease about 3/4 of this. I've found that if I grease the whole thing, I get so much buildup in here of grease. So I do about 3/4, and what I do is I get my grease, I put a little bit of pressure on, and I just turn this gear. And as it takes grease, I'm applying a little bit more pressure each time. Until I have about 3/4 of it done. You have to do a little more. Probably have to do a little more. Oh, you know what? I think we're good. Then we go back to doing this stuff. Just keeping everything in order. Very important. Get all this stuff lined up. Alright, so your drag's pretty much set. Got this last washer. This piece right here. And now my side plate's pretty much ready to go back on. There's one more place I like to put a little grease. And I'm going to get a little bit of grease on the Q-tip. And that's right in here. And that's just your button. That's just where your push button slide is. So I just like to put a little bit of grease on it, just because that's something that's moving all the time. Right before I put the side plate on, I put my springs back on. And now this side plate's ready to go on. But before I do that, what I want to do is I want to put a drop, not even a full drop. I want like a quarter drop of oil right in here on this ball bearing. And then I like to take a little bit of grease and put it on the inside of that. Okay? And now we're ready to go. I'm just going to slide this into position. Alright. Then I'll grab my screws. Alright, another screw. Another thing you guys should pay attention to is making sure you keep your parts list. Anytime you buy a reel, it comes with a parts breakdown, like a worksheet that shows where everything goes. Make sure you keep that, guys, because that can come in handy when you're trying to put this back together. I'm going to put my handle on now, and then I'll do the last two screws. So, first things first, you want to put this knob back on, your tension knob. Make sure this is oiled. It already has a decent amount of oil in there. Put it on upside down. Don't want to put it on too tight, because then it's hard to snap the other side plate on. Then we're going to put our drag washer thing back on. Get a little bit of grease. Okay, that'll go on. Then your two washers. Now, something very important with these washers is, hopefully you can notice, these things are curved. They kind of curve up on the corners. The way you want these in, you want the bottom washer curved with the corners coming upward, and then the next washer you want curved downward, so that the ends of each of these washers are going to push together on each other. Very important you set that up right. Then we'll put our drag knob on. Remember, reverse, or now you're going to put these on left counterclockwise to tighten it. Now, one thing you want to pay attention to, this is a round threaded surface going over a non-round threaded surface. It's very easy to cross thread these things, so make sure that you're lined up and you're not putting it on crooked, and you shouldn't feel any kind of binding. If it's binding, it's not on right, so just back it out and start again. Just like before, you're going to have to hold this post to get it on the rest of the way. Okay. Now we're going to go with our handle. You have your washer, your handle, your nut, remember, We're going counterclockwise to tighten it. Now this you don't want to tighten way down. It should be snug, but it doesn't need to be super tight. And we'll put our keeper on there. Okay. We're going to put the rest of our screws on. We have our grease window here. This one you don't want to put on real tight either, because you can crack that grease window pretty easily. And then last but not least is the screw in here. And depending on your reel, it might be a different screw. You might not even have a screw there. I have some reels that don't have a screw there. But okay. Now, you also want to grease your worm gear. Some people use oil. I like to use grease. You're just going to put this in here and squeeze grease into every gear. And then when you rotate it at the end, it'll spread it out. But just make sure you grease every gear. You can even do that at the end too. And then you want to put a drop of oil on that guide bar. I put just a little oil, not even a full drop, right there. Put a little grease on this side of the switch. So your button functions properly. Now we're ready for the spool, right? So you make sure it's clean. You want a little, like half a drop of oil on this ball bearing right here, and then a little bit of grease on both ends. Okay, and you slide this in. Take your other side plate. You want a drop of oil right here on the ball bearing. And then you're ready to go. You're ready to put it back on. Pull that lever out. Get that into position. It'll click in. Tighten your screw down. Now you can turn it. It'll spread that worm gear grease out. Look at it too, because if it's missing any, you wanna make sure you grease this pretty good. And I mean, you're pretty good. I'd like to go and just double check to make sure all my stuff is tightened the way it's supposed to be. You don't want it super tight, but you don't want your stuff loose either, where your stuff's going to be coming out. But that's pretty much it. Thanks for checking it out. If you guys have any questions, let me know. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. We'll talk to you guys later.